We've been in contact with other head coaches from HBCU.
I turned down the Jackson State job to come here, Roland Martin. Jackson State called me. Deion Sanders called me himself, man.
Bethune-Cookman had every right and reason to fire Ed Reed. He lacks the temperament, the discipline, the focus, and the communication skills to be the most prominent face on that campus. A separate issue, which we will get into, is that Bethune-Cookman is a mess. That was never in doubt.
Too many black and white people who have no idea how HBCUs work. Our culture, our history, what we go through. And then this conversation happened, and it was like, yeah, let's hire the great football player who don't know nothing about coaching or running a program and let him put a spotlight on these programs. These programs didn't have spotlight. You just weren't paying attention. You just didn't care. But when it's something sexy like crime or Ed Reed show up, now you all of a sudden are some historian on how these campuses and universities work when you haven't even grasped the idea to talk to somebody who has HBCU credit.
Just because you go to a school or you get a phone call or you visit, even have maybe 1 or 2 interviews, that does not mean that you've actually gotten the job.
By Ed Reed saying that, he either dry snitched or somebody's lying. Because I vividly remember, since Coach Prime loves to put everything on film and post it on social media, he sat in a team meeting after he announced that he was leaving and said, I know who I want to be our next coach, and it's TC. So if you wanted him to be the coach, then how did you also call Ed Reed? So either Ed Reed dry snitched on his boy or Deion lied in front of his team about his support for TC.
Well. Jim Trotter, the man of many outfits and many styles, the hatted golf-playing Jim Trotter. You've been on you either going to the golf course after this or you just come from the golf course. Which one is it? Trotter?
Let me tell you. I'm never going to lie to you. I just left with 4 holes remaining so that I could join you, Michael Holley. That's how much I love you. So I got off.
That means you weren't. And
by the way,
that means the round wasn't. It wasn't a great round. It wasn't a great round. That's why you left.
The round was good. This is Palo Alto Hills Country Club, which I got to say is a tremendous track. So from my standpoint, look, you know this, Michael. One of the greatest things about our jobs, or at least when you were a sports writer out in the field, is our ability to work remotely. Which means that I can get out and play around the golf and still do the work that I have to do to stay employed. So I want to thank Palo Alto Hills Country Club for bringing me out. And, man, and now I get to be with you. What's better than that, man? That's a great day.
That's great. Hey, listen, and sometimes, just to elaborate on that, sometimes it's one and the same. Sometimes you can get work done while playing golf, depending on who your golf partner is. A lot of NFL deals get done that way. Hey, Jim, I'm thinking about the news today.
Let me tell you, there was some work going on the course today.
I know. I know.
Okay.
Listen, you get those scoops. You just don't get those scoops just by sitting around. You get those scoops in a variety of ways. And so one day when you write your memoir, you're going to tell us all about it. How give us the anatomy of the great Trotter scoops and how they went down on the golf course at Palo Alto Country Club. So
there will be no memoir from this end, my brother.
No,
there will be no memoir.
I was thinking about the news. The news today, man, puts me in this mind where I say in every relationship, whether it's individual or corporate relationship, there's always going to be somebody who says, why them and not me? Like people probably said that to you when you married your lovely wife. Hey, why him? Okay. why him and not me?
Exactly.
I'm sure there was some of that. And Jim, let's not delude ourselves. Even in our business, you talk about how great it is to work remotely and to travel all over the world and see some great athletic feats. some of the jobs you've had, you've worked at some of the great companies, NFL Network, ESPN, Sports Illustrated. You've been at some iconic names in the business. Some of the same people who sent you congratulatory texts put that phone down and said, damn, why Trotter and not me? Okay, so I understand there's a lot of that going on. So I'm getting, this is what I'm getting at. Carolina Panthers hired Frank Reich today as their head coach. Frank Reich was hired over the interim guy, Steve Wilkes. Now, I can understand if David Tepper, I can understand if David Tepper had gone for a bigger name. Steve Wilkes is not a big name. I think football people understand what he has and the value that he has. But your average fan is not saying, hey, you got to go out and get Steve Wilkes. Frank Reich is a bigger name than Steve Wilkes, but it's not huge. But a bigger name than Frank Reich, and some of you have been listening to some of you people are really fascinated with a coach who won a Super Bowl in the pre-IG, pre-TikTok era. That would be Sean Payton. Yeah, I'm hating on Payton. So if you wanted Sean Payton, everybody's darling, media darling, Sean Payton, I guess I can understand it. But Jim, I keep looking at this, and I look at what Frank Reich did in his last job and what Steve Wilkes did in his last job. They both were dealing with problematic offenses and organizations and starts that didn't reflect what ownership expected. And one guy did a better job than the other. And the guy who did the better job was Frank Reich in Carolina. Yet,
you're talking about Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes in Carolina. Yet Frank Reich comes in and takes the job that Steve Wilkes not only kept warm, but made more appealing than we thought a few months ago. It's not surprising. I just want to point this out. It's not surprising. It's disappointing. I've seen this story before. It's just another chapter in a very long book that was started before you or I stepped onto this planet. So I'm just wondering what you see or what your observations are when you look at Carolina Panthers hiring their next head coach, and it is Frank Reich.
Well, when you say, number one, that it's another chapter in the story, part of me says it is also another example A in Brian Flores' lawsuit against the NFL for discriminatory hiring practices, of which Steve Wilkes signed on to that class action lawsuit. So I think that somehow this will come up at some point in that lawsuit. Let me say this first off before we get too deep into it. I think Frank Reich is a good coach. I really do.
Yep.
Is he the guy that I would have chosen? No, not in this case. I believe that Steve Wilkes earned this job. Here's the other thing. Steve Wilkes, you knew, was not going to get this job a couple of different ways. Number one, when he was hired as the interim coach, what did David Tepper, the owner, say? Steve Wilkes would have to do a quote-unquote incredible job, end quote, to even be considered for the job. So right away, you knew that he was not the guy that David Tepper was interested in hiring. Then at the end of the season, after he has this club in playoff contention, admittedly in a bad division, but with 1 week to go, in 1 week to go in the season, they are playing for the division title, right? Who could have predicted that when that team was 1-5, when they had traded away their best player, Christian McCaffrey, when they were going through playing musical chairs with quarterbacks, whether it was Baker Mayfield, P.J. Walker, or Sam Darnold, when Steve Wilkes had to fire a couple of coaches who he felt were not on the same page with him because they were tied to Matt Rule. All of those things working against him, and what happens? The team goes 6-6 under him, and again, with 1 week to go, is in position to compete for the division title. In my mind, I tend to think that's a pretty incredible job because I don't think anyone saw that coming. And yet what happens? He doesn't get this job, even though he is a local guy from that area. He is respected and beloved. His players came out in support of him getting that job, just as, say, Charger players came out in support of Brandon Staley keeping his job. So when you add it all up, to me, this again shows me that Steve never had a chance at this job. And again, remember, you and I talked about it on this show. What happened after the final game of the regular season? Considering the great work that Steve Wilkes had done, and the owner didn't even show up to the game. Didn't even show up to the game to say, thank you, players. Thank you, Steve Wilkes, for not throwing in the towel on this season, right? So, as you say, none of this is shocking or surprising, but it is incredibly disappointing, particularly for a coach who I believe had earned the opportunity to have this job.
And you said in this case, and I agree with you. Yeah, Frank Reich is a good coach. He's good. He's a good coach. But to use David Tepper's word, not incredible. Not incredible. No. Do you realize Frank Reich in the AFC South, they never won that division. He didn't have a division. He didn't have a division title on his resume. He has not been someone who has developed a quarterback. As a matter of fact, he usually brings in the older quarterback. I know Andrew Luck left, not his fault. But Andrew Luck was out, and they had Phillip Rivers for a season, and they had Carson Wentz, his guy Carson Wentz, but that was a disaster. He stood on the table for Carson Wentz and wound up apologizing to Jim Irsay. More on him in a second. Wound up apologizing to Jim Irsay for saying, hey, Carson Wentz is our guy. Wentz came in, the numbers look good, but they were turned off by him, and they traded him out. Then they bring in Matt Ryan. That didn't work. And then they said that was goodbye. It was goodbye to Frank Reich after that.
Right. But Michael, this is something I just want to ask you about this or make this point to you too, in terms of the media's culpability and how these coaches are portrayed publicly. So when I'm reading a story today about Frank Reich being hired, it talks about how he was with Philadelphia when Carson Wentz had that MVP season. He didn't win the MVP, but he was in line, a front runner to win that MVP and whatnot. But it never says, well, when he had Carson Wentz in Indianapolis, Carson didn't do squat. So it's interesting that we're praising him for having Carson when Carson did well, but we don't mention how poorly Carson played when Frank was the head coach and Carson was under his tutelage there. So I think in terms of how we portray these coaching candidates and the perceptions that people have of them, we in the media are culpable in terms of guys like Steve Wilkes not getting the true opportunity that they deserve because we sugarcoat for some, but not for others. Yeah,
to a degree. And Jim, I agree with you. I agree that we could do a better job. We could all do a better job of being more precise in our descriptions and being more thorough when we talk about these candidates and these coaches. So as you pointed out, great example. If you're going to give Frank Reich credit for getting Carson Wentz to an MVP type level in Philadelphia in 2017, then you also have to tell the story of, well, Frank Reich was also the guy who finished second at best. Second in the AFC South his entire time there, never won the division, and had to apologize to the owner. This is actually, I didn't make this up. It's a fact. He had to apologize to the owner for bringing in Carson Wentz. But the reason I say to a degree is, I'm going to tell you a story. And I can't be too specific because it's a little sensitive. And, it's maybe a personnel issue. I maybe shouldn't be saying all the details, so I'll speak in general. I love story time with Michael Holley. Yeah.
I love story time with Michael Holley.
I'll speak in general. So Boston University, where I teach sometimes at BU, they were in the midst of hiring some new professors. And they brought one professor in who happened to be African-American, brought candidate in. And they were talking to her about the department and how the department lacked, frankly, black people. in positions of authority. And they were talking, hey, we got to be better. They're saying all these things, we got to be better. And she kept asking the same question. But why is it? But why are you in this situation right now? I want to hear you. You can tell me about how you need to be better and how you need to be stronger and you're committed to this. But I want you to give me the why. And I loved her style. I loved her approach because what she was getting at is, you tell me. I want to hear in your words. I'm not going to allow you to hide behind DEI. I'm not going to allow you to hide behind all these catchphrases and all this stuff and how you feel this and you feel that. No, tell me why. Show your work. Give me an explanation. So we could talk about the media and we could talk about the Rooney Rule, but why? Give me a why. Give me a why, owners. Why do you find yourself in this position? They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like the Rooney Rule. Don't tell me what to do with my team. Let me do what I'm going to do. So when we watch you do what you do the same thing over and over. We've seen it over and over. It's not the media. It's them. It's their lack of,
no question.
I don't know what it is. Maybe their lack of trust. Lack of comfort, lack of belief that somebody like Steve Wilkes can have a vision for a program and amazing. You're right. It was incredible. You know what he was able to do without training camp and without a good quarterback? He was able to make a team competitive. He was able to come up with a vision overnight. He didn't know Matt Rule was going to be fired, when he was going to be fired. He didn't know Christian McCaffrey was going to be traded, and Robbie Anderson, not a great player, but like a good third or fourth receiver. It looked like they were about to tear this thing down. He didn't know they were going to have to release Baker Mayfield and that Sam Darnold would get hurt and that a P.J. Walker would be his guy. And on the run, he kind of cobbled it together and made them competitive. So
he changed their culture. He changed their culture.
Is that not enough? Is that not enough? So and Burt Breer, is my guy. Burt Breer is my guy. Friend of the show, brother of the show. He's a Buckeye. He's got good judgment, good intelligence. But put that tweet up again. That tweet, and he's just going with the information he was given. That tweet pisses me off. The Panthers have felt like with a young core headed by Brian Burns, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin, Derek Brown, Ike Ekwanwu, and DJ Moore, they could offer a coach a place where if you could find a quarterback, you could win right away. Okay. So you're telling me that Steve Wilkes did not have a quarterback, and all the things I just said still happened. He didn't have a quarterback, nor did he have training camp. Training camp is huge. He didn't have his own staff. That's huge.
See, but Michael, this is why I say to you, we in the media are culpable in this as well, because we put out stuff like this and we feed this to the public. It's truly infuriating. And I like Bert, and I think he does a great job and all of that, but I agree with you 100% on this. So now now Frank will get to select or bring in a quarterback, and all these other pieces are in place. And if they have success, then he's the savior. Well, I would like to see what Steve Wilkes could do if he had a quarterback to go with this young talent that they have defensively. Why not give him that opportunity, which, again, he has earned? He's not asking for anything that he did not earn. But that's the kind of stuff that's infuriating to me because, again, we don't focus on what the real story is there, And we create these, to me, false narratives. Steve, I can't use the word that I want to use on a family show, but Steve Wilkes was done wrong here.
We are a family show. We're a family show, but it's a family show where, hey, I don't know what kind of family you come from. Okay, kind of family I come from, yeah, there's some nice stuff up in the living room. Then downstairs, aunts and uncles who've had a little something to drink, a little music playing, maybe got some card games going, playing some dominoes. They say some stuff. They say some stuff that, oh, okay, oh, honey, go to bed. You don't want to hear them talking. They're talking. So go, you can say it. It's all in the same house. We're moving from the living room to the basement. So go ahead, say what you got to say.
Bruh, Steve Wilkes got screwed. Okay, Steve Wilkes got screwed. Because let me say this to you. So now the narrative is that David Tepper wanted an offensive-minded coach, right? Never mind that Matt Rule, who he hand-selected himself, had an offensive background at Temple, right? But he wants an offensive-minded coach.
Too. Still paying him. And still paying him.
I know for a fact who Steve Wilkes was considering for his offensive coordinator position. I know some of the names that are on that list. And let me tell you, they are quality names. So to say you need an offensive-minded head coach, to me, is just foolish thinking, again, on the parts of owners who don't ask the question of what is required of a head coach to be successful? And do you create a list of the things that you need or your vision for what is required for a head coach to be successful? Tony Dungy, who you've had on the show, has spoken on this before publicly to me about it and whatnot, and says NFL owners do not know how to hire head coaches, and the NFL should have a class to help them. And I have said this, I think, to you. If not to you, I know I've said it elsewhere and written it. If I were in charge of the NFL, forget all this Rooney Rule stuff that we know is just window dressing. I would say to NFL owners, here's what I need for you before you ever do a head coaching search. I need you to put down in writing what it is that you are looking for in a head coach. All of the traits. Do you want someone older or younger? Someone with previous experience, no experience? Is someone who's hands-on, someone who delegates, a teacher, or someone, again, who allows others to teach? All these, put it all down, defense, offense, special, whatever. And then start your interview process. And when you get through your interview process, and you make your selection, go back and look at that list and say, how many of these boxes, in terms of the vision that you have for your head coach, did you actually check? Or did you get carried away with a name and simply want to win a press conference or hire someone that consultants are telling you is the hot name so that you can then say to your public in 2 years when that coach flames out, don't be mad at me. I hired who the media and the consultant said I should hire. These are the hot names, you know?
Well,
and that's what we see here. Think about this. On average, since 2000, there have been 7 head coaching changes per year. On average, that is nearly a quarter of your league is changing its head coaches every year. If that does not tell you that your blueprint is flawed in terms of how you run your organizations and your business, I don't know what else would tell you that.
Well, last thing I'll say as we head to break, last thing I'll say is that, Jim, this year, I could be wrong, but this year on My Bets Your Money, I won more than I lost, barely. Won more than I lost. That means, hey, going against the spread, I did all right. So I'm going to give you a My Bets Your Money on Thursday. Today's Thursday, right? Here's a Thursday My Bets Your Money. I will bet you that the new head coach in Indianapolis, to bring this full circle, will be Jeff Saturday. So think about that. One interim guy did a disastrous job. He's going to get hired. One interim guy did an incredible job, and he's moving on. Brother from another rolls on. We'll talk some hoops coming up. Unbelievable. That's my bet. All right, welcome back to the show. Incredible, there's that word again, but this is actual. It actually was an incredible piece in The Athletic. And why the Warriors are in danger of losing Bob Myers, you NBA fans know. Bob Myers, a former agent, but is the general manager of the Warriors. And a general manager who has done some pretty fantastic stuff. His time in the Bay Area has presided over the current dynasty. The dynasty's not over. It's a dynasty, the Warriors dynasty. He's brought in some key players. He has the respect of those key players. But Bob Myers might be out the door, and Anthony Slater is one of the writers who put this piece together. And Anthony, wondering why. Okay, let's just start right there. Welcome to the show. And why is Bob Myers going to be out potentially?
I think it's a multitude of reasons, which we kind of had to lay out in deeper context. But, as most things starts, I think it starts with money. He is not the highest paid GM in the league, even though you could pretty easily argue he's been the most successful GM over the last decade. And he, Joe Lacob, the owner, contends that he's top 3. The other side contends he's not top 3. I think there's some incentives and base salary disputing within that. So that's kind of at the heart, pay me like I am Bob Myers in a sense, but also direction of the franchise. I mean, I think anyone that follows the Warriors on even a semi-regular basis can see this 2 timeline clash that's going on, and ownership kind of having this vision to pivot off the dynasty era to the next era. And I think Bob deciding, do I want to be a part of that? Am I the one that maybe is going to have to axe some very popular heads in the next year or two? And also he's just, I think at the point where he's also thinking about what's next for him. He's super successful. He's, super well liked, not even just in the NBA community, but, Silicon Valley, all that. So I think that's all coming to a head.
I thought it was a fabulous piece that you guys did as a someone who was born in San Francisco, someone who was a lifelong Warriors fan, someone who attended games as a kid, and actually someone who was there last night at the game. And to be around people and talk about them. I thought it was a tremendous job you guys did in terms of pulling back the curtain on some of the stuff that's going on. I'll ask you this. The dichotomy in terms of what the Warriors are trying to accomplish in terms of winning a championship with this core group and at the same time developing these young players, where does that come from? Why has it been so difficult to choose one path or the other?
Well, the guy that pulls the most powerful lever in the organization, Joe Lacob, does, and he's stated this publicly. He's been pretty transparent about this. He does not want an extended rebuilding period. He has referenced the Lakers from basically post Kobe era. They had 6 straight years out of the playoffs. He's like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. He has built this sparkling arena, Chase Center, which sounds like you were in last night, which is a very nice arena. He wants at least relevant teams within that. So he's trying to plan for the post Steph Curry era. But Steph Curry doesn't want to plan for the post Steph Curry era, and has proven last season that they can still win a title. They did win a title. You could see them contending for a title this season, but they've added even more youth onto the roster this season. They bought a 2nd round pick. They took a guy 28th overall, mostly just project type players. And in a lot of ways, that's weighing down the current roster. And that's where I think just this tug of war is coming to a head in a lot of ways.
Is the tug of war primarily between is the tug of war primarily between Myers and Lacob, or are there other parties that are involved in that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parties. The one thing about the Warriors is there's a lot of powerful people within the Warriors. The players hold a lot of power within the Warriors. And I'm talking Steph, but I'm Draymond Green, a powerful personality. Andre Iguodala, he's played 3 games this season, but he carries, weight in the organization. Steve Kerr, outspoken coach. Myers, and a large front office, which includes 2 of Joe Lacob's sons. And then Joe, who's very out there as an owner. You'd almost compare him, Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban, that level of just front facing. And there's just motives everywhere. And I think, Bob has made some of these draft picks, and I think Bob has somewhat agreed, hey, if we're using these draft picks, we need to go swinging high upside, number 2 overall pick, go for a, high level talent instead of just a 22-year-old that can help. Now, Kuminga actually looks like a very good pick. I'm sure you saw him last night looking pretty good. So, but I think the big thing is when they really put this plan into place was a few years ago. They had just gone 15-50. They were the worst team in the league, got Wiseman. And even the next season, they didn't make the playoffs. They were playing. There was a lot of doubt that they could ever get back here. And so they put the plan in place. Look, this era might be kind of dying, so let's get all these picks for the next era. And then Steph, Draymond, Clay proved, no, we can still win now. And that's where it's been it's kind of hard to pivot off something that, they honestly didn't believe they were going to win the title.
Agreed.
Agreed. Hey, Jim, I'm looking at, we had a text chain going last night, and I'm looking at, and it was a passage from the piece, and I told Gary and Natalie, Anthony, I said, this is one of my favorite passages. I said, one has to wonder how the face of the franchise, talking about Steph Curry, would respond to losing the face of the front office, whose signature moves for Andre Iguodala, Kevin Durant, and Andrew Wiggins were pivotal to winning rings. And I just like the way that was really, you really set it up nicely there. Like, okay, there's this parallel thing here, this tension going back and forth between this camp and that camp, all under the Warriors umbrella. And what really blew my mind, though, was seeing that Joe Lacob studies the draft, weighs in on personnel decisions. I just don't like this. I think there's an art to it. And I understand you spend a lot of money on a franchise and you're like, well, it's mine. So don't tell me I can't do this. But that model doesn't tend to work. What I'm getting at is this. I'm not trying to mess up your access and your media privileges here, Anthony. Is Joe Lacob, is he doing too much as an owner?
Well,
is he
I'd say this about Joe Lacob. He came in, he bought the team. So he buys the team from, Cohan, who is, as I'm sure Jim knows, was a horrible owner. I mean, had run the Warriors into the ground. And he gets there and he makes a very controversial trade at the time, trading Monte Ellis to Milwaukee to get Andrew Bogut. And he was booed relentlessly in Oracle Arena, his first real public appearance. And he was adamant then that look, I'm coming to change the culture, and we're going to be a sparkling brand franchise. We're going to build this grand palace, and we're going to win a bunch of titles. And that seemed absurd at the time, and he's been proven correctly. It is so hard to build the building in San Francisco that they did. So he has, in his life, always, what we're all saying and critiquing him, I think rightly for in a lot of ways, he's always proved people wrong. And look, you said I couldn't, turn the Warriors into a dynasty and build this, palace. And I did. So I think part of him right now, he just has such an ambitious approach of no, I will contend forever. And history says, no, you're going to have to go through a rebuilding period. You can't just draft the next Steph, Clay, Draymond. They don't exist. They're unique people and figures, but he thinks he can.
Well, I get that part. What I'm saying is, why him? I mean, if you got Bob Myers, is he essentially trying to be Bob? I got that he has his vision. Good for him. A lot of business people are like that. You said I can't do it. I did it. Look, I pulled myself up from my own bootstraps, blah, blah, blah. We got it.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is he getting in the way of the general manager? Is that the problematic piece here, that Joe Lacob is trying to be the executive of the year, not the owner of the year?
Yeah. I think that they are somewhat collaborative in the sense of hey, we are using the second overall pick. We're not trading it for future assets to help now. We need to build for the future. Let's go to our big scouting department. They have a very large scouting department, and Bob's involved. And I do think a lot of the actual draft picks were pretty, consensus, but it's more vision, vision of not to move off the young guys, not to move off this next era, he also the guy just loves basketball. He plays it a lot. Like I said, he's in these draft workouts, which is very rare. And it's just, he has his opinions. And I mean, Jim, you were talking about some of the NFL owners earlier, they're their own bosses. They can, if they want to be heavily involved, it's part of why they spent so much money on the team. And it's tough to say, no, you can't be.
As we said, as Michael and I have talked about, Marty Schottenheimer used to say, ownership has its privileges. But here's my thing. If you want to go down that track that you're going to use these draft picks on these young players and whatnot, the only way players develop is by playing. And the reality is, Steve is not playing these young guys, the minutes that are required for them to develop. And that's why I say that this organization, something has to come to a head. And if you're not all pulling in the same direction, you don't have a chance. And look, Michael knows this. I'm the biggest Warrior honk, one of them out there. I mean, maybe behind Natalie. And what I saw last night and what I have seen this season, and it pains me to say it, they're not winning a title this year with the way that this is going. They're not. The chemistry is not right. The roles are not right. And when you have this sort of division about what direction are we going, you got to be all in. You can't dip your toe in the water, and say, basically, we're going to try something out. You got to be all in on what you're doing. And you see the frustration from Steph last night, even, with the ejection. Why?
Sure.
Because they keep making the same mistakes. In the press conference after the game, what's Steve Kerr say when he's asked about turnovers? Yeah, we bring the guys in at practice, we watch film, we go over it, we talk about it, and then we go out and do it again. And then we go and we watch film and we talk about what not to do and what not, and what? We go out and we do it again. This team just doesn't feel right. And this story, which was, again, phenomenal, I would recommend everyone read it, I think highlights some of why this just doesn't feel like previous years with this club. And maybe you think I'm wrong, but that's just what I feel.
No, I agree. Look, they're 24-24. 48 games is a large sample in the NBA. And it surprised some people. If you go back to the summer, so they just won the title, which gives you, an extra, I guess, level of confidence in your processes and everything. Their belief was like, look, Moses Moody's ready. Jonathan Kuminga's ready. Yeah. Wiseman is good enough to be a backup center. Maybe there'll be some bumps early on, but we'll come back. And, their belief was like, it's a more talented roster. Otto Porter may have helped win a title more than a Kuminga or a Wiseman could have, but the upside is there. And they just, I think, have been surprised by the lack of development. So honestly, when they went 3-7 early in the season and had some really bad losses, that just rocked everything, because suddenly they're 10 games into an 82-game season, which they usually take almost like an 82-game preseason. And suddenly Steph Curry's like, no, we need to win tomorrow night. Which means that two-way player over there that's 24 years old, he needs to play over the 20-year-old that you picked second overall. And that's where it just to me, that's where it started kind of going haywire.
Well, what struck me real quick about last night? Struck me real quick about last night? Think about this. Steph Curry used the word desperate, that they were desperate for a win last night.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even got to the All-Star break. And he's saying desperate, not because they're playing Memphis, which obviously is an up-and-coming team and a threat in the West, but because they can't get their stuff right. Yeah. So when I heard that, and you hear Clay say the same thing, it's a big game because we got to get right. I'm like, man, this is not good.
Well, I'll tell you, if that's not good. Go ahead, Anthony. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you talk to people, the major figures, about bigger picture views of this, it's it was dynasties always end, number one, and dynasties always end ugly. The Bulls one did, the Lakers one did, Shaq, Kobe. Breaking up is hard, right? And there was always going to be an end. And honestly, it is extended longer than most people predicted, including themselves in some ways. Maybe not Steph, Clay, and Draymond, but and you're just, I think you're seeing the early writing, the early story of how it kind of started to dissipate. And part of that is just, it's obvious, clashing of motives. It's just do we care about we're all in on this season, or do 4 seasons from now matter? Well, that just depends on who you ask in the organization. And whereas 4 years ago, everyone was all in on the now, because they were all in their prime and they were all winning and Durant was around. This was bound to happen, is what a lot of people will say.
Well, Anthony, thanks for I know Jim, but thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate you. Great work on this with the Athletic. That's one.
Absolutely.
2, that ejection last night was BS. He shouldn't have been ejected. Context matters, officials.
No, not true. Not true.
He shouldn't have been ejected. And
yes,
3, I'll tell you what is true. I'll tell you what's true, Jim and Anthony. If the Warriors played a round robin with Memphis and Boston, they would win the title. They're a different team against those teams. They play them. They actually make sense against the Grizzlies and Celtics. When they got to have it, they usually get it against them. I don't know. Everybody else on the road, not so much. What do you mean he shouldn't have been ejected, Trotter? What are you talking about?
No, he should have.
Now, y'all, I put it in my feed that I need some prayer. And you gotta be honest enough with yourself to know when you need God. I need God. I need help. I need to be saved from myself, because here we are. We got Brock Purdy going to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles on Sunday for the right to go to the Super Bowl. And somebody, I don't know who, somebody tried to tell me last week. Somebody said last week, wait a minute. I'm a little concerned about Dak Prescott Somebody tried to tell me you're putting too much faith in Dak Prescott. You need to put your faith in the Lord, not Dak Prescott. That's what Reeta, the NFL chick, tried to tell me. She tried to set me straight. And Reeta, I'm sorry I didn't listen. I will listen to you today. You are on. The floor is yours. How do you see Philadelphia? I like it. I like the glasses. I like that. How do you see Philadelphia, San Francisco playing out on Sunday?
This is going to be fun, right? I mean, both defenses are really good. Both teams, they know how to run the football, but then they also have dynamic guys on the outside. They like to use their tight ends. I mean, I'm really going back and forth on who I think can win, because I can make a case for both teams, right? I mean, Jalen Hurts has been exceptional since they brought A.J. Brown in. And that defense, like I said, has played really, really well. But then also we know San Francisco has the number one defense in the league. And Brock Purdy, I mean, we keep saying Brock Purdy, but I really feel like Kyle Shanahan is the puppet master behind all of this. Because, when you have guys like a Christian McCaffrey, like a Debo and a George Kittle, and that catch that he had was amazing. By the way, you just need to not mess it up. Don't mess it up, and you're going to be good to go. And so I really don't know. I think if you had to ask me today, I'd say Philly, but I don't feel confident about saying that. Like tomorrow, I'm probably going to say, San Francisco can give me a reason to say they're going to do it too. But I just don't want to take away what Philadelphia has done all season. I just really feel like that they've just been on a tear. Obviously, hopefully Jalen Hurts is still good enough and well enough to play, because we know he's dealing with that shoulder issue. But I just really like what they're doing right now. So I think the Purdy train stops in Philadelphia. That crowd is going to be amazing. It's going to be wild. But I think it's going to be another close game like we saw on Sunday.
I agree with you 100%. And isn't that the beauty of the playoffs, where you just can't make up your mind about which team is going to win, because these teams are so good and so competitive? The thing I will say to you about Purdy, to me, I was at both playoff games, that he's played thus far. And last week, obviously, Dallas's defense did a tremendous job, and he did not have one of his better games. But the beauty of what Purdy does in that game is he protects the football. And in Kyle Shanahan's offense, as Reeta was just talking about, they're asking him only to make a certain number of plays to win the game. And the throw to Kittle, obviously, was one of those plays. Short of that, what did he do that Dak didn't? He protected the football. And so for me, I tend to lean towards San Francisco from that standpoint. Defensively, they're great. Offensively, they don't beat themselves. And two, I have some real concerns about the health of Lane Johnson. And I know he gutted it out last game, but man, that's a tough injury to play through, especially when you're talking about playing the number one defense in the NFL. So if I were choosing leaning one way, Reeta, I think I would lean San Francisco.
And I think that's fair, right? I think that the team that makes the less mistakes somehow finds a way to win this game. And that was my concern last week when I talked to Holley. I really felt like, Dak is a guy that I love the way he plays, but sometimes, he just overdoes himself. He just overthinks himself or tries to make a play that really isn't there. Because I really felt like Dallas played well enough to win and that they should have won.
Oh,
because
no question.
That second pick in the red zone was, obviously crucial when you think about it. But, ultimately, it really boils down to who's going to make the less mistakes. And I agree, Jim, that, San Francisco has given you every reason to believe that they're going to be the team that's less mistakes, because Brock Purdy has done just that. He's played. And even though, look, there were some plays that Dallas didn't capitalize on last week, because it should have been some turnovers. It just didn't happen. But ultimately, I just really feel like they do play safe football. So that's why I'm saying I can make a case for either one. And you do make a valid point about Lane Johnson. I didn't even really think about it like that. But I mean, every day I go back and forth. And like you said, that's the beauty of it all. I feel like these teams are very well matched. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a blowout in any type of form like we saw in the Philadelphia Giants game. So this should be really fun to see how this goes. But I think you're right. The team that makes the least mistakes, I think, finds a way to win this game.
Yeah, see, I'm too invested. I'm so emotional about it that
why are you emotional about it?
Because it's so much tied up. It's not just a game. It's not just a game for me. It's the narratives. I'm just really upset with narratives and
let's hear what's bothering
the Kyle Shanahan love is out of control. The Brock Purdy thing is out of control, and I'm so against it. I'm claiming I grew up in Akron, Ohio, but I'm going to claim this week I grew up in South Philly, North Philly. I'll go Delaware, Jersey, Camden, whatever, Allentown. I'm claiming the whole area. Because I want Philly to win so desperately. I don't want to deal with the 49ers and the Shanahan sycophants in the Super Bowl. I'm going to Arizona. Jim will be there.
What's your issue with Shanahan? What's your issue with Shanahan?
It's too much. It's too much.
Were you like this in 2001 when Bill Belichick and Tom Brady was doing this?
Well, but they weren't getting that love either. No, I wasn't. I was making money off of it.
yes, you were. Thank you.
Okay, but listen. They were underdogs. Nobody was calling Bill Belichick a head coach genius in 2001. They did after. But no, he wasn't anointed before he won the Super Bowl. He was as a D coordinator, but not as a head coach. Go back and look it up. They were underdogs. They were embraceable. They were 14 point. Hold on. They were 14-point underdogs in 2001. 14-point dogs.
Right.
Okay, so nobody said,
Who is anointing Kyle Shanahan as a great head coach?
That's what I want to know.
You people.
Yeah.
You people.
No.
National media. Oh, go look at it.
Don't put words in our mouth.
If I Google Kyle Shanahan right now, you know what will come up? Roses will come out of my phone. They'll just roses will explode out of my phone for Kyle Shanahan.
As a play designer and play caller,
come on.
Kyle Shanahan is among the best in the league. That is different from saying he is a great head coach. So, some reason you got something against Kyle, and I don't know what it is. But you cannot deny that this man is truly one of the best play designers and play callers in the NFL. You can't deny that, Michael.
Okay. I don't have anything against.
Are you? No. Let me ask you. Are you?
I may have an anti.
That?
Maybe I'm against the media.
Are you
maybe
denying
I'm against
that?
the media. I just
are you
don't
denying
like
that?
That he's what?
No. Answer my question. Are you denying
What's
that he is one of the best play designers and play callers in the NFL? Do you deny that?
Sure, I don't deny it. No.
Okay.
But
all right. I just want to be clear.
But that's not how he's described. He's not described that way.
You have to look at it like this too, right? I mean, he's on his third quarterback that they got in the 6th round, right? Like you lose Trey Lance really early. I think a lot of
7th.
Excuse me, 7th. I apologize. 7th round. You got Jimmy G came back, and I think there's a lot of inconsistencies on how we feel about Jimmy G. Do we really like Jimmy G? Is he consistent enough to win football games? And somehow he retooled that offense to where Jimmy G made few mistakes, I feel like he did some things. He allowed some shorter passes, things that just weren't as risky as we've seen before. Then you add some talent to help him out because he is a little consistent at times. So when you add Christian McCaffrey, it obviously helps you out because he's another yak guy. And then he goes down. And then you bring in the 7th round guy that, at Iowa State, he wasn't really lighting things up. And then they just been on a roll. I mean, you got to give somebody some credit.
I will.
Are we giving John Lynch the credit for the players? Like, what are we doing here?
Hey, Reeta, I'll do that. As we say in Philly, let's talk about that other John. Kansas City, Cincinnati. Who do you like there and why?
pains me to say it. I think I like the Bengals, and I say it pains me to say it because obviously cover the Ravens here. So, look, I seen Patrick Mahomes as a full participant in practice miraculously. I watched the video of him walking away from the podium. I don't know what he got in his blood, but apparently he got some Superman powers in him, because I don't know how anybody's able to do any of this stuff with a high ankle sprain. But it does give me hope, because we know that Patrick Mahomes really uses his legs a lot to keep plays alive. But I just really feel like that this team for the Bengals is just really good overall. Their defense is good and is underrated to me as the other teams that we've been talking about in San Francisco and Philly. And then we know that offense is just really good. You try to play zone, they're gonna beat you there. You try to play man, yeah, they're gonna beat you downfield. Oh yeah, and they can run the ball. So I don't know how Kansas City is going to be able to stop this unless they continue to keep the ball on the field. Well, they don't really run the ball a whole lot. So time of possession is a thing here. So I just really don't know how you get Kansas City to keep Cincinnati off the field. And that's my problem. And I just see Kansas City lose, like, unfortunately.
Jim, as the clock winds down, Jim, who you got?
Cincinnati. Look, they've beaten them 3 times in the last year plus with a healthy Patrick Mahomes. Now Patrick is not healthy. And I'm so glad Reeta brought up the Bengals defense, because it deserves more love than it is getting. Lou Amarillo has done a tremendous job with that unit.
Reeta, and you deserve the love. Thanks for blessing us. Come back now.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Reeta, take care of yourself.
All right, guys.
All right, Jim Trotter, simple question for you. How'd you play today?
Not too bad. I mean, I haven't played since August, so got to get my rhythm. Got to get my rhythm.
Oh, excuses. I hear excuses already. You didn't play that well.
I said I played all right.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.